Welcome to Sales Velocity TV, where we pull back the curtain on how the top businesses in the world sell more with less resistance. Bringing over 50 plus years of combined sales experience and over 100 million in revenue generated, please welcome the hosts of Sales Velocity TV and two incredibly entertaining gentlemen, Andrew Cass and Aaron Parkinson.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Sales Velocity TV. We're in episode 20, my friend. We're a new show. We just hit episode 20, and excited to share this topic here today. And don't let the title fool you, by the way. When we say print, we're not necessarily referring to old school newspapers and magazines, although they can be effective today. We are talking about the concept called salesmanship in print, which really is copywriting and being able to use the written word, Aaron, to persuade and to move people to action and ultimately to make more sales. Using the written word, I feel it is the biggest rock that I see business owners run into time and time again, day in and day out, is not being able to use the written word effectively, not being able to get their message out effectively, and it's like hitting a wall.
Yeah, and you know, in our private coaching that we do, you know, the first module that we focus on is basically 100% this.
Yeah.
And it always is like the hardest module for people to get through, which is like, tell me about you, tell me about your story, tell me about your ideal audience, tell me about their pain points, tell me what you're going to solve for them, tell me what makes you unique and special. And they're like,
And but more important, and tell me about your offer. How is it different? How is it unique? How do you present it? How do you pitch it? What is your headline, right? That's the key and we'll talk about this today. The biggest thing of all that I want to start with is, what is the hook? And every great commercial, every great movie, every great trailer of all time, they have an unbelievable hook that gets attention. And we'll talk about this attention formula in a minute, because getting attention today is brutal. It is the hardest thing to do today. So this is really going to be all about how to use the written word. It doesn't matter what media, video, print, TV, online ads, doesn't matter what media is, but how to use the written word in a way that gets attention, gets interest, and gets people to take action. And there's an old copywriting formula we're going to talk about. And this is key, because you're right, it's a sticking point at every corner. Even when we do done-for-you services, Aaron, right? You talked about the coaching thing. I look at all these done-for-you, like we do a lot of done-for-you services within our software company, where we're building out sales systems and we're building out processes. And at some point, the $1 million question comes to the client, and it is, okay, tell us what you want to say at this part. Tell us what you want to write in your emails over here. What is your web page headline going to say? And it's like, I'm not sure. And that's the deer in headlights moment that keeps business owners stuck more than anything else. It's the copy and getting the wording right. And this isn't, you need to be a student of English and you need to be perfect with grammar. It's really not any of that. It's understanding how to use the written word in a way that gets people to take action. There's a difference between traditional writing and marketing writing or direct response writing.
Yeah, and most, you know, people struggle, and we talk about this quite often, because they're like, well, I have this product. I just want to tell people about my product and what's in it. And we're like,
right to the features of the product, right?
Right to the features, right? And we're like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I look at like supplement companies as a primary example, right? They're like, I've got the best vitamin. It's organic. It's all natural. It's GMP. It's vegan friendly. Yeah, I don't care.
Features.
There's 10,000 of them, right? How is that going to get my attention?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the first part of any great marketing is stealing attention. And I use the word stealing intentionally, because this, if you don't understand the amount of ads, you know, influencers, commercials that people are being bombarded with on a daily basis, you are vastly underestimating your competition for attention, right? So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to steal somebody's attention and hold it for at least a few seconds before we start telling them about our magic thing, right? So maybe it's important to talk about the framework, you know, coming out of the gate.
Yeah, the big question is, how do you do that, right? I don't think anybody disagrees that getting attention and keeping, right? Getting attention and keeping attention today is, without question, should be your number one motivation, your number one goal as a business owner, week in and week out. Forget everything else, operations, your product. I'm sure all that is fine, right? if you can't figure out new and different ways to get and keep attention, you won't be around long enough to make enough sales to sustain the business, right? It will become a fast cash flow issue for you. That's how important this is, getting and keeping attention. And it doesn't get easier as more social media comes out, as more platforms get released, as more TV channels get released, as more forms of online media happen. It becomes harder and harder to do it. So this salesmanship in print, this copywriting concept that we're talking about right here, is one that as a business owner, you should study deeply. This isn't, unfortunately, one of those things where you just, decide you're going to focus on this stuff and maybe you read a book. Something that needs to be studied is really the study of human psychology and what makes people move, what makes people take action. What are some of the ways that get someone to go from where they are to taking the next step to maybe becoming a lead in your system and ultimately getting on a sales call and ultimately making a sale? What are the steps that have to happen? That's salesmanship in print. That's the written word being used correctly along the way to get someone to take the action that you want to take. And there's an old formula called AIDA: attention, interest, desire, action. If you just remember these four terms, attention, we talked about that, interest, desire, action. It's probably a 100-year-old copywriting formula called AIDA: attention, interest, desire, action. I want to break the four down with you today, Aaron. And if you just keep it this simple as a good foundation and you build off this and you study more and you go deeper off this, you will be light years ahead of your competition when it comes to getting and keeping attention.
Yeah, and it actually ties very well in with the last episode that we did, which was story, telling for maximum profits, right? And, I live, Andrew, we both live in this world where we're spending a ton of money on a monthly basis in paid media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, etc. And it's never been more competitive to get somebody's click or to get somebody to watch a video. And let's just say you do the first part right. So many businesses think it's over at that point. Well, I'll just send them to my order page, or I'll just send them to my corporate website or whatever. And, they'll buy. Right? And the reality is they will buy. But the problem is that the percentage of them that will buy is so low that it's not worth even running paid media. You got to keep this flow, this AIDA flow, all the way through all of your marketing materials, your front end ads, your social media, your website, your follow-up email series, your follow-up text, so your direct mail, if you're doing direct mail as an additional follow-up. You have to keep following this framework, because it's the difference between, yeah, I saw a thing, or, ooh, this looks really interesting, let me dive in deeper.
And if you think about what you just said, there's really three components of that today, right? If you think about traditional advertising, let's say you run a Facebook ad, right? There's, I guess, point number one, right, where that's the place you get attention, right? The whole goal, obviously, of a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad or a YouTube video ad is to get attention. Right? The next piece of that is, how do you create enough interest to then get them to click through to get to your website, your landing page, your webinar page, your funnel, step two, right? How do you then create enough desire at that point to get them to take the action, which would be to become a lead, call in, schedule a demo, buy something, or schedule time with you or your advisor or your sales team, right? There's a couple, there's essentially three little pivot points, three little pillars right there. Getting the attention at the ad, keeping the interest so that they take the next step and take the action that you want them to take to do the thing you want them to do, so that ultimately you can be making more sales presentations to the right people. And if you look at it that way, it's almost like there's three different components of your sales process, right? There's the ad, there's the web page that they're going to land on to stay interested, and then there's the action that they're going to take, which is getting them to whatever process you're in. Most people look at just the ad. We see this all the time. I just need a great ad. I just need a great ad. I just need a great ad. Yep, true, partly true, but you also need a great place for them to land. You need to say the right things there so that they ultimately get to your webinar, your discovery call, your strategy session, your demo session. Otherwise, you're dead in the water if you can't connect those dots.
Agreed 100%. And you got to have that consistency of messaging across, and you got to keep having that framework continue across. I mean, if you look at, one of the key variables, especially in digital marketing, is bounce rate.
Yep.
Right? What's the bounce rate? How many people leave the site in the first 3 seconds? right? You can have the best ad in the world, and all of a sudden, if the person comes to the site and it doesn't align with what you were talking about, it doesn't grab their attention again, then they bounce. Mm-hmm. And if everybody's bouncing, what do you think is happening to your cost per acquisition numbers? What do you think is happening to your conversion numbers, right? They're going in the toilet. So you got to keep your entire process following this framework and keep it consistent across every piece, where you have to understand the currency is attention now, right? It used to be like currency was sales, but currency now is attention. The more attention you can get and you can keep, right, the more successful you're going to be as a business. Yep. And so it continues on, right? It's the ad, it's the offer, it's getting them in. It's actually getting them to do something with your product. It's keeping their attention after the fact so that they come back and they buy more, right? Or they buy something else, right? How do we keep the attention of our prospect, of our customer, over a long enough timeline where all of a sudden, the costs of media become negligible?
A couple ways to do it. Let's talk about it. First and foremost, the number one place you want to start with is your audience, right? Who am I marketing to? Who am I for? What is my niche audience, right? If you don't know who that is, it's really difficult to get the attention of a general broad audience. It's a lot easier to get the attention of an audience that's defined. I mean, that's, number one, right? Marketing 101 is, if I can carve out a niche that makes sense, maybe it's the niche that I'm in, maybe it's a niche that I have intimate knowledge of, maybe it's a niche that I'm in because I've solved the problem and I've overcame something in that, in that regard, and I can really show people how to do the same thing, right? That's usually how you end up in a niche, right? There's an affinity there somehow to the niche. So when you have a niche and you know who you're talking to, it becomes a whole heck of a lot easier to create a message for that niche. And that's when you go to phase 2, which is creating that hook or that message. It's a unique selling proposition. You've probably heard the term USP. What is my unique selling proposition? What makes me different? Well, probably not a whole lot if you're speaking to everybody. And we see this quite a bit with newer business owners. They're like, but Andrew, but Aaron, my product can help everybody. And we're like, that's great. I'm sure it can, but if it's not for somebody, it's going to be really not for anybody. And that has to be the first staple that gets handled, is the who.
Yeah, I used to see it all the time in the e-commerce world, right? You talk about like seasonality, for example, right? How many people do you think are buying weight loss during the 2 weeks around Thanksgiving in the United States? I can tell you the answer. It's zero, right? Yeah, so you don't want to be trying to sell weight loss, essentially from mid-October till about January 17th, because it's going to tank. Nobody wants it. Right? You don't want to be selling bathing suits. Doesn't matter how good your bathing suit is. Oh, it's made of recycled plastic from the oceans, and we give $10 away to every person who, to charity every time somebody buys one, and blah, 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 blah. And you're marketing bathing suits to people in Jersey in November because they ain't buying.
Total disconnect. And that happens quite a bit. Disconnect. That happens quite a bit. This is what creates the disconnect, right? The wrong message at the wrong time to the wrong audience. There's your formula for not having success, right?
Right. And when you get really, really clear on who your market is, what their pain points are, what their desires are, how you're going to be able to bridge them from the pain to the pleasure, right? Then you can accurately craft a message that's going to speak to them and hold their attention, right? And that's the key.
Yeah, and the messaging piece takes a little bit of work. So when you have the who and you know who you're for, this now becomes a situation where you need to craft some messaging that gets their attention. Now, one great formula I want to give is the good old-fashioned how to without formula. You know this, right? How to do something, right? Overcome something, make more money, lose more weight. How to do something without fill in the blank. This is probably the simplest, most proven starting point. How to fill in the blank without fill in the blank. How to do something without it, costing your life, without it, making you work more hours, right?
How to create maximum pleasure without having to be inundated with maximum pain.
Right. So here's an example in the weight loss space, right? Biggest market in the world by far, and it just continues to recycle. How to lose 10 pounds in 30 days without changing anything you eat, as an example. Right? Something like that, again, off the top of my head. But if you can just start there with the messaging, because you know who the audience is, and now you have a thing that can show them how to do something, I hope. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all selling how to do something better, how to shed something, how to gain something. Really what we're selling at the end of the day with our product and service is how to avoid pain or how to gain pleasure. So your how-to should be pretty easy.
I'll give you another great example. We had this client, you and I, last year called iVisa, right? And when they came to us, I was like, what's the hook? Right? And they said, well, we help people get travel visas to international companies without having to go through the government bureaucracy and paperwork of these completely disorganized, slow, government agencies in different countries. So I said, so let me get this straight. If I want to get a travel visa to say like India for some reason, maybe I want to go look at some e-commerce, manufacturers or something. How long would it traditionally take me to get a travel visa? They're like, oh, you're looking at like 12 weeks. Right? I said, well, how long if I go through you guys? They said, well, we'll have it in 2 weeks and you don't have to do any of the communication or paperwork or drama. And I was like, wow, how to get my travel visa to India without having to wait 12 weeks and dealing with 40 people in a government bureaucracy. I'm like, dude, I'm sold.
Right?
I'm sold instantly. I'm like, and they were, they grew that business up to almost $1 million a month.
Now, did they know, were they savvy enough to know what we're talking about here? I mean, we're deliberately structuring a how-to without type offer. Were they just already doing it? They weren't doing it very cleanly.
So we had to help them clarify that attention message piece. And once we had it, it was a rocket ship.
Clarity is key, right? I mean, the key word that you just mentioned there is clarity. When you have a how-to without formula, it creates such clarity on what it is that you do. There's no ambiguity. It's so simple what it is that you do, right? It's how to do this without this. Oh, simple, right? How to lose 10 pounds in 30 days without skipping dessert. I don't know, right? It's just such a good starting point because it's clean and it's simple. Now, it might not be where you begin and end, right? It will be where you begin. There might be other formulas and other hooks that you use. Some of the best marketing companies in the world, when you see brands out there that are omnipresent, that are everywhere, we talk about that term omnipresent on the show quite a bit. When you see brands that are all over the place, they're everywhere. They're constantly adjusting their hooks. They're constantly adjusting their messaging because they want different entry points. They might attract one group of people with that how-to without message, but they might be able to get in front of a whole different audience with a different style of messaging. That's just one example that we're going to talk about here today is the how-to without.
Yeah, and not only that, but one and done is not a term in good marketing, right?
Yeah. You wish,
you
right?
Put one together. You test it, even if you get a winner, then you're constantly iterating and creating more and testing against it because you want to see if you can beat the control.
Yep.
And somebody that we've known for a long time in this space, Frank Kern, he made a post the other day that said, when we write our first ad and it's a winner, we call that a freaking miracle, right?
Pretty much.
Because it rarely happens once, and you always have to be iterating and testing to see if you can beat the control.
Yeah, it's like the guy stepping up to the plate in his first major league at bat and he hits a home run. It's like better chance of seeing lightning strike for that to happen again, right? And funny, we were just talking about this, right? Like, so today for me, I'm like kind of dragging myself a little bit today because I'm like, I got to go shoot a whole bunch of videos because I know I can't do one. Because right now we're gearing up for big video ads on YouTube, a form of media that is, probably the biggest and most sought after form of media today. And I'm like, well, the journey begins, and it begins with not one or two videos. It starts with one or two videos, but I think you said, well, you're probably going to have to shoot like 40 or 50, because you're the traffic guy and I'm the funnel guy, right? So for those of you that don't know us, when we build companies and we work on projects, we sort of tag team it where I'm funnels and sales process and you're traffic and media. It's a beautiful 1-2 punch. So I'm like, man, did you have to tell me 60 videos before the show? I was in a good mood kind of this morning. And then he said, well, you're going to have to get up to 60. And I'm like, well, I was kind of thinking I could carve out 5 good ones. And I'm like, not even in the ballpark of that.
You're a pro. You might get away with 5.
It's still not easy though, right? It's just.
What I did say though, is I said our most successful, highest scaling YouTube client gave us 60 videos in the last year, just to give you context.
In the course of a year, that's fair.
Yeah, and it was over the course of a year because you're targeting, you've niched out and you've targeted your audience, but people respond to different tonality, different hooks, different energy, different backgrounds, different whatever. Yeah. And a lot of people, they shy away from this part in the beginning. They shy away from really researching their ideal client, researching their ideal pain points, researching what keeps them up at night. They shy away from this and they just start throwing stuff at the wall. And the problem with that is that you waste so much time just iterating over and over and over again when you could have saved yourself the time from just really getting inside of your ideal customer's head and thinking about what they want to accomplish without having to go through this pain.
Yep.
How to do X without having to do X. And when you take that time in the beginning, you're profitable so much faster, and you save yourself so much work.
Yeah, listen, I look at, one of my, I probably have 3 or 4 core marketing mentors that have really kind of shaped the way I do things over the last, 10 years, 15 years, probably more like 15 years. One of them is Russell Brunson, founder of ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels is probably, what's the valuation of ClickFunnels right now, Aaron? It's something like
I'd say it's $1 billion
value. So I watched that whole. I've watched Russell's journey when he was really nothing and became something. We got started around the same time, and I was in his mastermind group years ago. And he's always talking about, even to this day, this is a company that has almost $1 billion valuation, or at least a $500 million valuation, constantly coming to the table with new and different hooks to bring new and different kinds of people into their ecosystem. And I'm like, man, it's like they never run out of gas. They understand the importance of continuing to bring new creative, new ads, new video, and new hooks, new messaging to the table. So they might be running a webinar. They might be running a free plus shipping funnel for their books that they release, probably once a year. They might be running a free report funnel, right? They might be running an offer to, join I think one of them that they have is like a 5-day funnel challenge. Like always,
yeah, so one funnel away.
Yeah, always
challenge.
Something going on. Like it's never like we just did this one thing and now we just kind of kick back and optimize it. Yeah, that's part of it, but it's constantly adding new fishing poles to the water. And that's what I see the biggest and the best companies doing. Even companies that are small, couple people, right? Couple operators, but they're doing big numbers. They're doing big numbers because they're really good with the messaging and they're constantly bringing new hooks and new offers to the table. And it's fascinating to watch a company like that, the speed, the momentum, and the innovation. It's not easy to do, but it's kind of a simple formula.
Yeah, and maybe before we dive into these next parts, for those listeners that are saying, I don't know if I'm good at writing copy to get attention, or I don't know where to start.
Which is the majority.
Yeah, maybe you could give them some of your favorite, books that have allowed you to learn, copywriting at a high level.
Yeah, I think it's one of those old cliche sayings, success leaves clues, right? There's no big secrets, and you have to look at some of the people who have been writing. I think the best advice I can give on that is look at some of the people that have been writing copy before the internet. That's the big lesson, because if you could get people to do, like the internet is like we're cheating today. If you can get people to send money from a letter that was sent in the mail or a TV commercial, which, you see big direct response TV ads today. But if you look at the old school copywriters like the Gary Halberts and the Dan Kennedys and, guys like that, and Robert Collier. And if you go back a little bit, I like to study the new guys, but study the old guys as well and sort of put that together, old versus new. That's the best way to learn, because what worked before the internet, in most cases, will kill it on the internet because you have such speed.
No question.
So it's like, wait a minute, I can look at the, sort of the new players today. That's helpful. But if I go back and look into history a little bit and figure out what was some of the wording in psychology that got people to, and let's go back even to the 80s here, Aaron, when we were probably kids, right? Yep. Getting a letter in the mail with a return form, like not even a website, not even a phone number, but put the money, write a check, put the money in the envelope and send it in for the book or the course or the training. That's how the world worked pre-90s, which most people are like, what are they saying? That's how the world worked. So the marketing guys, the copywriting guys in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I'd find 1 or 2 of them to study, because if they got people to write a check, drop it in an envelope, send it in the mail, lick a stamp, oh my goodness, that wording must be off the charts, and certainly it can be transferred today to the internet, and should be. And that's the big lesson.
And there's so many of those old ads that I go back and I read now, and I'm like, man, this is absolutely brilliant copy. And the equivalent of kind of what you're talking about, just to drive it home, is, we see these big, skyscrapers today go up overnight, and it's commonplace, right? You don't want to overlook like the construction that went into building like the Great Pyramid, right? Because those guys built one of the most mathematically amazing, wonders of the world, rolling stone on logs,
good
and using rudimentary tools, to align everything mathematically perfect, and built caverns inside of things that should have crushed them. And like, I want to learn from somebody who pulled off that kind of feat with literally no help. I want to learn about the guy that wrote the newspaper ad that sold 200 million of some supplement, some book, some whatever, when they had to write it, send it, wait for 3 months to get out, to get feedback on it, write it again. And their whole job was contingent upon, you better make this campaign work. You better make your words speak to a human at a core level and get them to take action. Because now, like you said, I can go on the internet and write a piece of copy. I can throw it up. I could do it while we're on the show and write a new ad for you and me and throw it up in 2 minutes while we were still doing this show. And then be like, oh, let's see what happens. Right? But it's lazy. It's almost lazy because it's too easy now. The traffic is so cheap now. Back in the day when you were like, look, I'm $150,000 in for my first infomercial just to get started, or I'm $30,000 in for my first ad in a major newspaper. You couldn't be wrong. You had to be right, essentially the first time, right? So when you look at some of these old school copywriting experts, like anything that you learn from them will transition into what you're doing beautifully.
USA Today used to be $50K for a full page ad back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And today, by the way, when you go to the airport next time, USA Today still is a huge selling newspaper at airports. That's probably their biggest place that they sell newspapers, one of their locations. You will still see full page ads in the USA Today. You will see them. Usually you see them in like the financial services space. Could be gold, could be silver, could be trading. That's where I see them most. Or weight loss. It's always the big two, right? Finance, weight loss, make money, right? Usually those are the areas.
It's health. It's health and finance, right? And like, just to give you context, Forbes hit me up for a full page article about 6 months ago. Guess what the price was?
I would have no idea today.
$200K.
Today for Forbes magazine full page article. They must still have the readership, obviously, offline, which I'm sure they do. It's a big baby boomer offline audience.
Can you afford to not be perfect if you're dropping a $200,000 on a single page?
The beautiful thing about the internet is you could test the ad on Google and spend a few $100 or on Facebook and see what sticks, and then you could transfer. That's what the online offline guys would do today. Is they would test it for a small budget on Google or Facebook and see what kind of interest they got, what kind of attention they got.
Yep.
And then they would transfer it into a full page ad. You would be crazy to go cold on a full page ad in a magazine without testing it online first. That's the beauty of online media, is things can be tested at a very low dollar amount before they're scaled.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the difference between attention and interest, Andrew.
Let's do it. So attention, I think we covered, right? How do you get it, right? How do you stand out? It's uniqueness, it's hook, it's showing up a little. It's pattern interrupt. That's a biggie.
Pattern interrupt. It's being disruptive.
Pattern interrupt is a big. I forget who I was talking to this week. I don't know if it was a client or a member or a potential client or a potential coaching member, but somebody was having success throwing up an image that really was unrelated to the offer, but it was enough of a pattern interrupt to get. And this is Facebook, by the way. Facebook is it's a face platform, right? If you can put up a smiling or an awkward face or something that just stands out, it gets attention. And if you can follow that up with the right wording, it's a good 1-2 punch. And that's
I mean, Sam Cart right now is running an ad and is clearly killing it because I can see it, and it's a bunch of shredded cardboard.
And you're like, what is that?
The first time I saw it, it stopped me in my tracks. I went, what the hell is that? Right? And then I looked at the ad, and then I was like, oh, it's a Sam Cart ad. And I thought, oh, they're just going a bit off the reservation, today, testing something new. But they've been running it now for 8 weeks. So that image was enough of a pattern disrupt to get attention. And then it made me read the copy. And then the copy's goal is now to feed my interest.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the interest
and
piece.
That can happen through image. That can happen through headline. That can happen through the first 5 seconds of a video, right? Like when we're talking to clients with YouTube, we're telling them, look, speak directly to the pain point in the first 10 seconds of YouTube, because the great thing about the YouTube platform is that if somebody skips the video, you don't have to pay for it.
Huge.
Right? So if we were talking about weight loss in your example, right, coming out and saying, how would you like to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 days without having to change anything you eat. Don't believe the hype that you're seeing from all the other experts in the world, because this is the first time it's ever been done successfully, backed by 10,000 case studies. If you're interested, I'm going to fill you in on how it works below. If not, just go ahead and skip the video, right? We're coming right out. We're speaking to the audience we want to talk to. We're grabbing attention, and we're trying to pull them down into that interest category.
Yep. So let's talk about the interest piece. Obviously, this is where you need to utilize things that we've talked about in previous shows, actually last show, episode 19, stories, emotion, testimonials, case studies, credibility,
value,
right? Demonstrating value. There's so many ways to do it. The attention interest thing sort of ties together, right?
They blend.
They blend together. And then it's, getting someone to have enough desire to take the action. So we talked about AIDA, right? Attention, interest, desire, action. Attention, interest tie together quite a bit. Desire and action is the tricky part. How do you amp up desire? That's the emotional play.
Yeah, and like going back to the YouTube example with our frameworks, right? We're grabbing them with a big, bold statement, speaking directly to the audience that we want. We're not messing around, and then we're dragging them into the interest category where now we're saying, my name is X, maybe a little bit of origin story. I discovered this, this special hack, this special feature, this special way of doing things that's taking people from pain to pleasure. And, I'm going to be outlining, my 5-part, method to, achieving the goals and the dreams that you want, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden it's call to action, right? So we've grabbed their attention. We're feeding them with some value to stoke their interest level, right? We're basically saying, is this what you want to have happen in your life? Is this what you've been looking for forever, but you've been, hitting brick walls everywhere you go?
Future pacing a little bit.
Tapping into their desire, future pacing them. What would your life look like in a month if all of a sudden you could show up in your favorite red dress and it fit like it did when you were 19? Stoking that desire, future pacing them, and saying, okay, so to learn more about my 5-step method, click the link below, and now we're getting them to take that action.
Yeah. So the desire piece there is trying to create some feeling, right?
Yeah, it is. It's tapping into that emotional level with the client.
It might be something like in the weight loss example. What would it feel like if 90 days from now you were 10 pounds lighter, you needed a whole new wardrobe, and your husband or wife just thought you were stunning?
Right.
I mean, it's just something like that very few use that kind of language and that kind of persuasion, and they don't really elicit that kind of desire in their ads. And it's not easy to do. There's a level of awareness that you'll need to have when you're crafting your message. Again, it doesn't matter if this is a page for someone to book a discovery call or a demo with you. It doesn't matter if it's a page for somebody to sign in and download your free report. At every stage of the game, we need to get the attention, keep the attention, and create enough desire for somebody to ultimately go to the next step with you. That's how you ultimately sell more with less resistance, is you keep interest and you keep desire up all the way through the process until they get to you. So by the time they get to you, the ultimate goal here would be they're excited to talk to you. They almost come pre-sold, which is absolutely the game changer right here, is when somebody gets to you and they're like, wow, I've really been excited for our call, for the demo, for the conversation, for the webinar, because it just got me so excited, right? People are going to show up when they're interested and excited. They're not going to really show up if they're not interested and excited. So how do you create interest and excitement?
No, when you keep repeating that framework, from your ad, like for example, from your ad to your landing page to, in an example, to your webinar, when you keep running that same framework, a lot of people think that, I don't want to be too repetitive in my messaging. But the reality is that you're giving a little bit more and a little bit more at each step. So the person's desire is actually not staying level, right? The more they consume, and the more they see themselves in the product and the more actions they take, right, the higher the desire level goes up. So even though it's the same framework, it's almost like stair-stepping somebody's desire up into more and more and more, almost to the point where they're like, just give me the thing. Like, I'm salivating to get the thing now, right? And you look at that flow and you compare it to what so many people and so many companies do, where it's like, I've got a thing, now go consume information at your leisure on my giant corporate site with 52 different places to go. They lost it.
Yeah,
they lost the track. They did not build up this pent up desire to take the action that you ultimately want, right? Which is why you carry that same framework all the way through, and you can carry the same framework all the way through your email follow-ups, through your SMS. even through your first, strategy session that you're doing with somebody. Same framework, building, staircasing somebody's desire to take action.
And again, we've talked about this quite a bit as well. It's how are you helping somebody either avoid pain or gain pleasure? And usually the avoiding pain piece, we've mentioned this many times, is the biggest driver of all. And oftentimes what you do, what you sell, what service you offer is a way for somebody to avoid pain, do things better,
you look
do things
at
quicker.
Ibiza. Look at Ibiza as the example.
Yeah.
When they came to me and said, we sell travel visas, I was like, oh, I don't what am I going to do with that? And then when I said to them, well, what makes you special? And they said, oh, we help you avoid 27 pieces of paperwork and 3 months going back and forth with some nincompoop working in a government agency. I was like, oh, we're going to sell the hell out of this, because that is a painful experience that nobody wants to go through ever, right? Nobody wants to invest that amount of time in that nonsense, right? So it was an easy business to build up into an 8-figure range.
Right. And in that example right there, most novice business owners would be talking about all of the things we do for you, which is good, but not all of
the pain you get to avoid by working with us.
And that's where I'm going with it is, yes, the features, but then the benefits. So another big principle here, salesmanship in print, copywriting, persuasion, features and benefits, not just features. So here's all the things we do for you. Here's all the ways that benefits you, right? Saving you hours, not having to allocate a whole day, right? All the things that make you get excited, right? Make you desire the service is not just what they are, but how they impact you right now to avoid that pain or gain that pleasure. That's the conversation you want to have with yourself when you're doing your marketing is, am I nailing the features and the benefits, not just the features? Very few nail them both. Very few say, here's what it is, and here's how it benefits you. Here's what it does, and here's how it can help you. Very few play that tennis match.
Yeah, look at somebody like, I think it's Carvana is the brand right now. I could be wrong. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But my wife is in absolute love with this company right now, has never bought anything from them, wants to buy from them just to support what they're doing.
What is it called again? Carvana?
I think it's called Carvana.
What's the product?
And basically what they've done is they've said, you can skip all the nonsense about buying a new car. You don't have to bring your car in. You don't have to get it appraised. You don't have to sit in a finance office with a sales guy for 7 hours at the car lot. You don't have to do all the insurance paperwork. You don't have to go through all the beating over the head of the upsells and everything else. You can literally go to our site, put in your information about your car. We'll give you a quote on the trade-in value. You can apply it to the car that you want. We will ship you the car. The car will show up at your house. It will show up insured. We will take your car away from you on the flatbed. We will do it with a smile. And literally the whole process is going to take you 25 minutes instead of 7 hours in a traditional car dealership where you're feeling like you're being preyed on. This is what we do. And she's like, I would never buy a new car again.
Yeah.
I would buy it from them only because she loathes the experience in a car dealership at such a core level. And they spoke right to it. They said, hey, look, we solved every single pain point you have. Go online, buy the car, get a trade-in, drop it at your house, pre-insured. We'll give you the keys. We'll smile. We'll say thank you very much.
So they created an over-the-top offer, right?
Yeah. They irresistible offer.
Tons of desire to avoid the pain, right? I'll give you another perfect example. I booked a vacation yesterday for my family for 5 days during spring break is coming up with the kids. So we're going to go up to the mountains of North Carolina for 4 days, right?
Lovely.
So now most people are going on Expedia, hotels.com. They're going to American Airlines. They're searching flights. I'm like, I'm going to the American Express Platinum travel agent that is attached to my American Express Platinum card. I'm telling my wife this. I'm making one phone call. I'm going to hang on the phone for about an hour with this nice lady. And while I'm on the phone with her doing all that legwork, I'm probably going to be maybe catching up on some emails. I might be having lunch, which I was. I'm going to chill through the process. And that's exactly what I did. And in 1 hour's time on the phone, the entire trip was booked. The hotels were handled at a signature property. The flights were booked, all the kids, both kids, 4 people. And I'm like, that was 1 hour focused. And I don't know what it is, $40 they charge you at American Express Platinum Travel to do all that legwork, all that access they have to all the flights and all the hotels and all the discounts and all the benefits right there at their fingertips. Why would I take 3, 4, 5 hours and do that on my own to try to save $1? Right. So it's the same kind of thing. Like if that's you
love the experience. You love the experience that you were given.
Yeah.
Right. And that could be your USP. is the experience that you get. Everybody sells the same thing. Expedia sells the same thing. And hotels.com sells the same thing. Everybody sells the same thing. Maybe you don't have the time. Maybe you don't like the process. Maybe you just like feeling good and enjoyed the process. There's so many different ways that you can create interest with your clients. I think the single biggest example for me, Andrew, was the first time I chartered a private jet, right? I think I told you about this. And, I was late for a meeting in New York. My plane got canceled. It was a big, like 8-figure opportunity, and I had to be there and couldn't be messing around. So I chartered a jet, went cross country on this jet. And I drove into the private airport, and I walked in the door, and they said, Mr. Parkinson, thank you for coming. Hand us your passport. And I handed them my passport, and they said, we'll take care of everything. They left. There was no security.
Yeah, you don't even go through the main.
No.
Yeah.
Totally separate building.
Like parking your car.
No metal detectors. Yep. No signing in, no anything. They handled all of the customs, the paperwork, everything on their own. They came back to me 20 minutes later while I was having an espresso. They said, everything is taken care of for you, sir. When would you like to leave?
It's like you're getting on a bus, right? Yeah.
Yeah. When would I like to leave? I get to determine, when we go. Yeah. Well, sir, it's your plane. You can tell us when you would like to go. I was like, well, I think I'd like to go now. Okay, sir, let's walk out onto the tarmac. We walked on the tarmac. I got in. There was none of this sit down, safety demonstration, get off your phone, put your seat up. They said, you can do whatever you want. Right? I was talking on my phone, standing up in the middle of the plane, blasting AC/DC, taking off of the tarmac, and they were like, this is all yours. You would do whatever you want. Right? When I got to experience that level of enjoyment from that experience, it completely tainted everything about flying commercial forever. And I don't fly private a lot, because it's expensive. But you provide that level of experience for one of your clients, it's very hard for them to go back to whatever one of your competitors are doing, which is the Amex example that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you make. The word experience is key, right? What kind of an experience are you creating in your process, right? You got the attention, you got them to take the action, hopefully, make the phone call, sign into the website, become a lead. Now, what kind of an experience are you creating for them in your universe? And that's probably a whole different episode, but that's the customer development piece and the experience piece that people don't forget, right? They don't forget the experience piece. They'll forget a lot of the little nitty gritty things, but the experience, the connection they had with somebody. I love it when we get emails from members and customers saying, wow, I mean, your customer service team is amazing. You guys have all this support in videos and live chat and live trainings. And there's so many ways that, you guys help us and take care of us and care about us within the Pipeline Pro universe. When people come in, we get those all day, every day. And it's that's what they remember. They'll remember the experience way more than the product and service, right? And that's what you want to elicit
absolutely.
for sure.
And if you're in a commoditized business, right, this may be your differentiator.
It has to be.
Right? And you may be able to speak to your audience, right? And I'll use the Amex example, that you had, right? Are you sick and tired of searching for prices on airline websites and finding out that you can't put your kids and you all together in one row because they book you in all these different seats and they tell you got to show up, and then you got to move people all around, and then you've got the only choices of things to eat are potato chips and crackers, and having to do multiple connections on flights and getting delayed and not having a hotel. Forget about all those things moving forward. Welcome to the Amex travel, program, where we're going to handle every single of those things for you. We're going to make sure everything is top notch. We're going to book you the finest hotels. We're going to have backups if things go wrong. We're going to send a car on your behalf to pick you up, so you don't have to worry about, paying those nasty extra fees for leaving your car at the airport and blah, 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 blah. And it's going to cost you a grand total of X dollars. I'm done. I'm out. They just spoke to all my pain points,
yep.
Right? And at this point, I don't even care how much it is. Right? I'm going. That's what I'm using.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And everybody has this in their business, in their product and service. They have this either ultra convenience thing or this unbelievable experience like this. Everybody has, I hope you have this uniqueness in your product, or or you need to find it, right? This is your unique selling proposition, right? Coming back full circle here. You get attention and you keep attention by being very unique. And if you don't think you're unique, you need to find the element that is unique, because there's no doubt that there is some sort of unique selling proposition in what it is that you sell. And you need to search high and low to find that if you can't find it, because it's there. And if it isn't there, then you might want to look at a different product or a different service to market, because you need that to stay in the game today, because it's so hard to get attention.
Absolutely. And obviously, if you can do a good job of understanding your customer, understanding their pain points, doing your research, testing some ways to gather their attention, right? Building some rapport with them, sharing your story, talking about your aha moments, all that stuff, building up that interest, future pacing what their experience could look like if they worked with you versus somebody else, and starting to future pace how much more fun that's going to be in their life, and creating that desire, then the action, the outcome becomes relatively simple. But when you jump to the front and just jam the action in their face, we're a great travel agency, book with us here. It's like, what?
That's most websites, by the way. It's like, man,
right?
wow, that was like, where did that come from? It's like,
I have no context. Why?
I'm not even interested yet, right? I haven't even, there's no, like, what's the benefit? It's just this random stuff people throw up, and then they're like, oh, Facebook doesn't work for me. Instagram doesn't work for me. I can't do YouTube ads. Well, you haven't followed the framework. And the takeaway coming full circle here as we end is, it's this framework. It's attention, interest, desire, and action. If you do nothing else, write those 4 words down. It's called AIDA: attention, interest, desire, and action, and build your frameworks at each step. What is the attention I'm getting? How am I keeping interest? How am I eliciting desire? And what is the action I want someone to take? Have I bridged those 4 pillars? And when you do, you really can't fail unless you just don't put that in front of anybody, because very few do that. That's the formula.
That'll put you 90% ahead of your competition.
99, buddy.
Right? Yeah, I mean, if you can keep testing after that to try and, beat the control and improve the results, and you should, but just starting with that will put you, I say 90%, you say 99%. I don't know where the actual number is, but it's just following that framework will put you exponentially further ahead than the majority of your competitors.
Yep, it would. And I tell you as a listener watching or listening that that's the beginning of your study, right? Or that's the beginning of the knowledge you want to gain on how to make this work. Go a little deeper on this. Understand persuasion. Understand the psychology of what gets people to move. Take the time to do the copywriting study. I remember when I was, coming up in the information marketing, internet marketing world a decade and a half ago, probably around the time we met. Every single week, I would allocate, Aaron, you know this, I would allocate at least an hour or 2. Not a lot of time, by the way. An hour or 2 to studying copywriting, salesmanship, and print, the title of the show today. I would spend I was mainly studying Dan Kennedy's stuff, because he had this membership, by the way, which was really cool, which was called Look Over My Shoulder. And it was a monthly newsletter. And he would include in that newsletter, it's a $100 a month newsletter. Tiny little package would come to me every month. And it would be 1 to 2 examples of current copywriting clients he was writing copy for. And he was sharing how he was doing it. So here's the video sales order they wanted me to do. Here's what I changed. Here's what I added. I wrote it from scratch. Here's the formula. Here's how I did this here. And you would see how a multiple 6-figure copywriter, that's, he's multiple 6 figures just to be retained, right? He's like in the not anymore, but in the direct response marketing world, like hiring the number 1 criminal defense attorney on the planet Earth. I don't know who it is today, but it was like back in the day, it was, the guys who defended OJ, right? And there's a couple of them still circulating around. Like, if you get in big trouble, there's 1 guy or 2 guys you're going to go to. You're pretty much going to spend every dime you have on these guys. That's how Dan was for a couple decades in the internet, in the copywriting space. So I would study that stuff every single week, and eventually it starts to become second nature, because as you read and study copywriting, and you see examples, and you read sales letters, and you look at webinar formulas, and you go down this path, and you do this research, you start writing and communicating in print like this. You start to be able to communicate in video like this. You start to be able to put the right words on an ad, the right words on a script that gets people to take action. So the good news is it's simple to learn. The bad news is it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some study. It isn't something that you just do once. and show up for and read a book and you're like, oh, wow, I'm doing this all right. I'm killing it with my ads. This is
one of the most valuable skills in the world, though.
It is. And like we said in the beginning, it is the one that gets people stuck more than any other is when it comes time to get to the next step in a sales process, the number one sticking point will always be the wording and the messaging, people not knowing what to write. What do I say here? What do I do here? Is this strong enough? And that's why this skill is so important, because it gives you speed and leverage. Understanding copywriting gives you speed and leverage.
Yeah, we've given people some great books today. Robert Cialdini has some amazing books as well, that people can go through. I mean, it only takes a quick Google search to see who, the greatest copywriters in the world are. And you just start with one and follow their frameworks. I mean, I had an old framework from Frank Kern, who's not a throwback. He's he's more of a current type of person.
But he's been writing copy for a couple of decades, so he's kind of been a little pre-internet, post-internet, right?
Yeah, he was kind of like the first copywriter that really became prominent when things transitioned to the internet. And I remember just buying one of his frameworks, for a written sales letter, with my weight loss company, and I wrote one, and then I took his framework and I rewrote it again to see which one would win, and his won, right? And now that became the de facto framework that I used moving forward, right? So you find one person, study their strategy, study their flow, and start to test the frameworks, the AIDA framework, the different layers of persuasion and complexity that some of these other copywriting experts have, and have some fun with it. Because, man, you write one great ad, one great website, one great piece of copy. I mean, we're running almost the same, ad for Pipeline Pro that I wrote 9 months ago. I mean, how much money is that ad made?
And again, when you know what we know, stuff has legs. Like you said, that ad, 10, 11 months running, over $1 million in revenue from a couple ads that were written a year ago. I mean, talk about turnkey, talk about leverage, talk about 24/7 money. I mean, that's why you're in the game. But you got to have the skills to stay in the game. You got to do the little things that most people will never do to stay in the game. And that's really this piece right here. The salesmanship and print piece is the writing piece. It's the wording. It's the messaging. And when you can really get a handle on that and you can get a groove around that, boy, things start to move quickly. They really do.
Absolutely. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, man. So any final pieces of advice before we roll here and leave this salesmanship and print conversation into the episode 20 archive?
I say it all the time. Perfection is the enemy of success. Find a framework, put it down on a Google Doc, put it down on a piece of paper, whatever you feel comfortable with, and test it and let the math define your success.
Yeah, and last thing I would say is there's really no reason to reinvent any wheels. It's all out there. There's a lot of really great case studies. There's plenty of gurus in this space who have written great copy, and they've written great ads, and they've done great webinars, and they've written great free reports over the years. There is no reason for you to look at a blank white slate of a Word doc or a Google Doc and go, where do I begin? There's a beginning spot always available to you. You just have to go out there and do the research and find what's working and who's been making it work the longest. The longevity thing's a biggie as well, right? When you start seeing ads and offers on TV, by the way, or on the internet for months and months and months and months, guess what that tells you? They're not spending money every month because it's not working. They're spending money every month because it is working. So that's another thing you want to look at. It's all there. Just start to notice it more. And when you do, you can start putting a lot of these principles to work to kick some major ass in your sales process. So I'll leave it at that. Kick some major ass in your sales process. We'll see you in episode 21. That's Aaron. I'm Andrew. This one's a wrap. We'll see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Sales Velocity TV is powered by Pipeline Pro, the ultimate all-in-one sales pipeline management and marketing automation platform that makes all others obsolete. And we can prove it. Take a tour at gopipelinepro.com. See you on the next episode.